Welcome to Practical Psychology Podcast, episode 44. I'm Joseph Wong, one of the co-hosts. Today we are very happy to have Brittney Larsen, registered clinical counselor in beautiful Nelson, British Columbia. And Brittney has been here for many times. We are doing a series on planning for parenthood. Thank you, Brittney.
Thanks for having me again, Joseph.
So, Brittney, last time we talked a lot about the life transitions, challengings, strategies, and what would you want to talk about today?
Yeah. So I wanted to talk about something that is a big topic of conversation, especially these days, which is the village. The village that you bring your baby into.
The village.
Yeah. So when we're bringing home
I only know there's no man is an island.
Yes, exactly.
I'm curious to learn about this village idea.
Yeah, and so it sort of refers to days gone by almost, where there were support systems in place naturally with the way that society was organized. But as we've had more and more parents where both parents are working outside the home, and there's a little bit less of that. So the village includes people like extended family, friends, and sort of how to be best supported, and also how to set appropriate boundaries with the people who are your village.
Okay. I would love to hear about this village and villagers.
Yeah.
It sounds like a video games in Sim City.
Yes, kind of, absolutely. So I think one of the reasons why this is an important topic is because it's one area that people prepare the least for, and they also often find it really surprising. Sort of what happens within the relationships that exist, and also realizing that your village may not be as supportive as you had thought they might, or that you may or may not even have a village at all, because it's more common for people to not live nearby their extended family, whereas in the past, maybe you would have lived nearby.
Wow, Brittney, just talk about the village idea. I can see for some people, actually many people, can be a taboo subject because they have to face the reality and the fear that they might not actually have a village. But I guess this truth and transparency is also important for them to progress in their lives, rather than avoid it.
Exactly. And in previous podcasts, we've talked about sort of how to prepare and all the changes that happen to the couple when you bring in a baby, and also to individual identities. But the same happens for these other relationships, and they shift and change with a baby arriving. And also, the research is clear that social support is one of the single most powerful protective factors for the couple's transition into parenthood. So it is an important factor, but also a complicated one.
Yeah, Brittney, I remember last time you talked about the research is very clear. When the baby comes, the relationship satisfaction will go down for the majority of the couple, which is a fact.
Yeah.
And okay, let's talk more about these social support changes.
Sounds good. So sort of having people who love you and who show up and who help, it genuinely improves the mental health outcomes of both parents and makes the whole transition more sustainable for the entire family system.
Okay.
But at the same time, the same people who make up that support network can also become unexpected sources of conflict, because when a baby arrives, so do opinions. And also old family dynamics that have been kind of sleeping or dormant, they suddenly wake up and reemerge. So things that you had kind of forgotten from your own childhood.
Okay, so when people plan about this parenthood between two people, and now because of the village, some of the larger people involved, chosen family, biological, original family, they could have different opinions and even conflicts.
Yes, exactly. And when we think about it in sort of relationship where there's two parents and assuming that there are grandparents on either side, there can be many people involved that create new dynamics as well, especially if there's step parents. So then, there can be many grandparents involved, even just with the two parents.
Okay, wow.
Yeah. And so with a new baby, everyone's very excited. And also, everyone feels that they have this stake in the new baby's life, because a new baby kind of creates this continuation of a family story. And everyone in that story has their own feelings about how it should unfold, how things should be done. So grandparents are also navigating their own identity shift. There's research from McMaster University that confirms that becoming a grandparent is a genuine transition, and it can bring sort of a sense of renewed purpose, but also real adjustment challenges to figuring out what your role is.
Okay.
So
Wow.
grandparents are figuring out their new role just like the parents are.
Oh yeah. So, Britt, you're saying about the grandparents, even though they are not as sleep deprived as the parents, they go through an identity change and they have their opinions and stories and adjustment.
Yeah, and they're used to being the parent up until this point, even though their children are adults.
Yeah.
Parenthood is a very different role than grandparenthood.
Yeah.
So some of the complications are that as new parents who, like you said, are completely exhausted and overwhelmed, are not always in the best position to sort of gracefully manage the dynamics that start happening in the village in real time.
Okay. So in this real time, the parents become the grandparents.
Mm-hmm.
And then somebody also become a parent. There are a lot of dynamics here. Tell us more about this village dynamics here.
Yeah. So there's
village politics here.
Village politics, exactly. And most of the time, people are genuinely trying to be respectful. But like I said, it's also everyone's very overwhelmed and sleep deprived. And sort of when we talk about sensory input, like other people's opinion can start to feel overwhelming to your nervous system because you don't have the space to process it. So it's sort of seen as added input and pressure at a time when you don't have the capacity to take anything else on.
Okay.
So sort of one of the clearest principles from the research and clinical practice is that each partner takes the lead on setting limits with their own family. That is often the best approach.
Okay.
But it sounds simple, but it's really genuinely powerful and also challenging. So in some families, it can just be like brushed off, and then the partner ends up having to deal with their extended family, which creates increased conflict because they don't have the same kind of relationship naturally as they would with their own child. So sort of it means like not asking your partner to be the bad guy with your own parents, essentially, or your step parents or any bonus people in your world. So basically, when you manage your side, they also manage theirs, and it removes a huge amount of resentment before it has a chance to take root. By sort of knowing this going in, that each person, each parent will manage their side of the family, their friends, so that no one becomes a bad guy.
Okay. Britt, this idea is very profound and in a way not commonly talked about.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, we see a lot in couple relationship or family counseling. The couple will be talking about the challenges between them because of the communication of the in-law, that maybe the husband couldn't be a communicator, so the wife has to take on the extra piece of pressure on either side, so that will be a really good planning for people to be aware.
Exactly. And during pregnancy is a great time for the partner who maybe is less likely to have challenging communication with their family, it's a good time to practice before the baby arrives and sort of having that plan in place, because some of what you just described comes down to what skills you were taught. And it is common for the more social and family oriented things to just be sort of pushed onto the female in the relationship.
Yes, yeah.
And
Wow.
it can create real challenges because it can't all be put on their shoulders. Like we said in a previous podcast episode, women also end up carrying a lot of the mental load for the relationship, and that can be part of it.
And in a way here, Brit, it looks like we're trying to really have each person manage their own company or their own side.
Yes.
If each person have difficulty managing it, this stress will kind of lead to the other side, have added burden to the other spouse or partner, which is very common in counseling.
It is. And a lot of these things happen slowly over time. So most people don't go in thinking, I'm going to place all this responsibility on my partner. It usually happens slowly over time. And then people kind of recognize it once it's too late. And the resentments are huge.
Yeah. Because we hear so many times in or outside of counseling, people are really begging their spouse to talk to their parents to do this and that.
Yeah.
And they just feel like the other spouse is not taking charge, taking ownership for that.
Yeah. And a lot of that can come from, say, you didn't learn skills of conflict, so you're avoiding any potential conflict. But what that does is actually creates way more conflict in the long run, even though you're avoiding it in the moment.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
And so those conversations with extended family go so much better when some of the groundwork is laid before the baby arrives. Because before the baby arrives, everyone is calm and there's no sort of immediacy or urgency to the conversations. So grandparents or other people in the village are less likely to become defensive because it's happening about a hypothetical baby instead of an actual baby or an actual scenario that has happened. So sort of, we plan to have a specific sleep schedule, and we will need our family to help accommodate that. So if we're having family dinners, let's plan to, work around the baby schedule instead of the baby working around our schedule. That kind of thing. You might not have the specifics, but sort of just having conversations like the example I just gave, where so the grandparents know kind of what your priorities are going in.
In a way, Britt, just talk about these two people managing their own family dynamics.
Yeah.
Before the baby arrives here, especially for some people that are not good at communicating, it would be good to have some sort of a family meeting. Yes. Moderated by a moderator or a psychotherapist or counselor.
Exactly. It can be really beneficial in the lead up to a new baby arriving. Even like some of the conversations that, would be great prenatally would be like how the parents would like the first few days at home to go. Would they like people stopping by, coming and going, or would they like that time to themselves as a family unit to bond? Or same thing goes for at the hospital, or if it's a home birth, or, there's all sorts of different ways, but sort of having a conversation about what they would like it to look like. Also, like going forward, what kind of visits actually feel supportive and what feels overwhelming. So say a lot of people will offer to come and hold the baby while you have a shower, but that actually, it could be really helpful for the couple, but it also might be more helpful to bring meals and do dishes and vacuum, or, the things that are really challenging to get to as new parents when you're so sleep deprived. And yes, showering is one of them, but sometimes it's not the most helpful to be holding the baby because a lot of times one of the parents is feeding the baby. So it's, and that's a big learning curve all on its own. So sometimes the things that we think are helpful might not actually be helpful and might be overwhelming for the new parents. So having those discussions ahead of time can be really helpful, or at least early on. And another one is sort of parenting decisions that are non-negotiable for the new parents, and what we are okay with input on. So sort of setting those boundaries ahead of time, like what we're okay with your opinions and input for and what we're not, because we're creating our own family and we have our own priorities and values.
Okay, tell us a little bit more about that, Britt.
Yes, so that one can be the more loaded conversations for people.
Okay.
Yes. And it can create some defensiveness. It depends on the grandparents. So, for example, I like to use my own family as an example, so I'm not accidentally breaking confidentiality with my clients.
Or asking for a friend.
Exactly. So I thankfully have parents who are really respectful of my boundaries. And funnily enough, I remember in the early days of motherhood calling and asking for advice and them saying, well, we had kids 30 years ago, so probably we're not the best people to ask for advice, but we're happy to help once you've sort of discovered what it is that's best in the research, because they know how much things change over
They
that.
are very future-minded.
Yes, and this is not a common experience. So that's kind of why I use the juxtaposition of my parents, who were very great about following my lead and my husband's lead. But that's pretty uncommon because people, like I said before, have a stake. They love this baby before the baby even arrives, and they want to be helpful. And sometimes people feel like giving their opinions or making comments is helping. But often what it's doing is becoming really overwhelming and frustrating and just unnecessary for the parents, who already with the internet have enough opinions coming at them that are all contradictory about how to parent.
Okay, wow.
Yeah, so they don't really need added opinions. So having a conversation about, like, when maybe even just if we want your advice, we will ask, can be it can be as simple as that. It doesn't have to be a big drawn out conversation if you know the grandparents are likely to become more defensive, or their feelings might be hurt or whatever it might be. Sort of, it can just be like, we're feeling overwhelmed with all the information about parenting. If we'd like advice, we'll ask, but otherwise, please follow our lead. It can be as simple
in
as that.
This topic here, I would imagine it will be highly personalized.
Exactly.
Due to the specific grandparents, and also due to the parents' own communication style. For example, some people have difficulty asking for help.
Yes.
So they will do extra accommodations.
Exactly. And so this is where some of the trickiness comes in, because grandparents are often trying to like read the minds of the parents and what they might need. So they're guessing a lot of the time as what will be the most helpful. So the communication does go both ways. Yeah.
Wow. And because the open communication will be in different styles in different family settings.
Yes, exactly.
Even though we go with the same principle to be open, transparent, respectful.
And culturally, there's lots of different ways of communicating that are kind of expected or common. So there's so many considerations that it is quite hard for me to give specific examples unless I'm talking to a particular family unit or family system.
Okay, I see. Okay.
Yeah, because each individual has so many different intersections and considerations about their lived experience and their partner's lived experience, and all the family that sort of blends into that as well.
Wow. So Brittney, so far we mentioned about two concepts here. First, one is they each parent manage their own grandparents sort of companies. Number two is about what is negotiable, what is non-negotiable, that sort of list.
Yeah.
Okay, what else are in this British politics?
Yeah. So I just wanted to make clear that these conversations are not confrontations.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
one thing can feel that way when we sort of talk about it in this way, and boundary setting almost sounds like confrontations. But what it actually is having these conversations are more like invitations to be part of the family in a way that actually works for everybody, instead of a lot of assumptions being made, because that usually does not go very well.
Wow. So I guess maybe we can reframe these boundary settings to a team building exercise.
Yes, exactly. And like giving the parents maybe some new leadership skills.
Okay. Yeah, because they're learning some skills for a new project.
Yeah. And I've mostly been focusing so far on grandparents, but I wanted to quickly touch on friendships as well,
Okay,
because
sure.
this one can be particularly like something that sneaks up on people.
Okay.
So before a baby comes, your friendships operated on sort of a certain rhythm. And then after the baby comes, that rhythm obviously changes.
Usually people disappear.
Yeah,
Then
they don't want to bother you, or they don't really know what to do that would be helpful. So yeah, these changes are often in ways that no one really chooses, but they can create real distance in friendships, and friendships are really important. So for friends who don't have children, they might not know how to show up for you, like I was saying, and they don't know what's helpful, so they kind of can pull away because they don't want to be a burden either. And then friends who do have children suddenly become an entirely different kind of important to you. So because they are people you can check in with, and they may not have had the exact experiences you've had, but they have had challenging experiences to talk with. So research supports the value of this peer support, connecting with other people who are in that same season of life as you. It can be really meaningful for new parents, but then also maintaining friendships from your past, maybe people without children or people whose children are much older, and finding a way to incorporate those people into your life as well, even if it looks different than it used to when you had more ability to be spontaneous. So finding your people doesn't happen by accident. And that's part of what I wanted to mention about the village part of it. It really does take some intentional reaching out, even when reaching out feels like one more thing that you don't have time or energy for. So for parents, text messaging has actually, even though it can feel like a burden because you have all these messages you haven't answered, it also means that when you have a moment, you're awake in the middle of the night with your baby, you can send a message to your friend and they'll get it when they wake up, and it may look different than it did before, but you're still making that effort to connect, even if the connections are farther between than usual or kind of random, like in the middle of the night, just so that you have those people and that connection.
Wow. And Brie, here I also want to point to, we talk about this village starting with the grandparents, parents, and now the friends. And I think it might be also a taboo subject too, when the friends group, somebody become a parents, and some of the people who are not parents yet, they might feel their identity shift or even the comparison. So to drive them away, which is a taboo subject a lot of people don't talk about too,
Yes, and that is a challenging one where sort of like stages mean that you're less compatible as friends, or you now have different values and goals. And it doesn't mean you're not friends, but it might mean for this season of life it's harder to maintain those friendships. Or you may recognize that maybe the friendship was great for that phase of life, and maybe you'll pick up at a later season. There's so many different ways it can go. But sort of considering, where your values are and what your priorities are is really challenging. And a lot of friendships can be lost along the way.
Yeah, it is true, because let's say people hang out all the time, And now when they hang out, oh, you have children, I don't have children, I am behind you, that sort of thinking.
Yeah.
And it really can drive some of the friendship can die or
Yeah. Or just, yeah, kind of take a back seat for a while. Um,
yeah.
I have a best friend that I have been friends with since I was 5 years old. And our kids are actually similar ages, but we don't live very close by. And what we both recognized is that our day to day lives involve sort of our neighbors and the community from the schools our children go to. Of course, they're older now, so that's part of it. They're in different after school activities. And so we don't see each other as frequently as we thought we might with kids who are similar age and who get along wonderfully. But sometimes convenience is a big part of it. We both spend a lot of time with people in our neighborhoods because we don't have a ton of extra time. So we do have to be more
Yeah.
intentional about our friendship, and also hold more grace for each other when, chunks of time go by and we're not able to make it work.
Yeah. And now, Brit, we talk about their grandparents, parents, and friends. I also want to touch on a taboo subject here.
Mhm.
And especially Canada is a very diverse population. For a lot of people from other cultures, they're used to that collective, a big village. Compared to the
Yes.
North American, the nuclear family concept is naturally very challenging. Just have two people, is especially now, two people have jobs. Also,
Yes.
it is expensive. So, how about for people who really don't have a village? How do they plan for it? Because it will be ultra challenging.
Yes. And so one of the things that is a trend is that people create their chosen family.
Oh,
So
yeah.
it's sort of people whose values are in alignment with yours, whose kids probably are similar ages, people to provide support. So there's sort of this mutual support and creating your own village when you don't have family nearby to help, or kind of, yeah, looking for local resources and connecting to the community in other ways. But I think the main issue is that a lot of people are in this situation and they really struggle and they don't have a village. So that's why this conversation of the village has become really popular in the last decade or so, because people really feel it when they don't have that, when they don't have people they can
Wow.
even turn to talk about things, even if they're not getting the practical help. Um, it is a very big challenge, sort of away from from the collective into the more individual systems that are created, especially in North America.
And especially relationship building, chosen family, it takes time. So when
Hmm.
people become a parents, all of a sudden from 100 to zero, and looking for that build up will be a long time struggling.
Absolutely. And so that's why there's great things like if in your area you can sign up for prenatal classes. You might not feel that you need the actual
Yeah.
information, but you
Yes.
can meet other couples who are having babies around the same time as you. And even if those relationships don't last forever, they might last, 5, 10 years and get you through some of those more challenging times with people who are actually living the same thing as you in the moment, because different stages with kids are quite different.
Oh, yeah. And
Yeah.
good
So
to
like
hear
going,
because,
yeah,
yeah, most people, they don't think about making friends as a constant process.
no.
They just go with the flow. So suddenly their friends are in different stages. They lost friends and they found out they haven't actually intentionally make friends for a long time. And they're
Yeah.
scared.
Yes, because there's sort of, as you go through life, you kind of pick up friends along the way, and it's more natural to meet people. But it's harder when you have a baby and you're home by yourself a lot of the time, or with or you're home
Mm.
as a family a lot of the time. And like trying to meet people and build relationships that stick beyond sort of playing at the playground or going for a walk. But that is actually a really great place to begin, is like going for a walk when your babies are, in strollers or your baby wearing, and kind of just to get yourself out of the house. But yes, you have to be really intentional and kind of think of ways to meet people in your area. Different areas will have different options. I had kids in a smaller city, so there was less organized groups, but there were like things at the library or um, child sort of sing-along type things and nursery rhymes. Like they have lots of groups like that drop in for children under age 5, and just finding putting yourself out there, even when it feels impossible to put yourself out there. It builds community over time, even if it's not instant. You start to recognize people and connect with certain people who, their kids get along with your kids or whatever it might be. But yeah, being intentional about finding the resources in your area that might help make friends and build a support network. There's even, I can't remember what it's called, but there's basically like volunteer grandparents. So often it's grandparents whose grandkids don't live anywhere nearby, and they don't have grandkids at all, but they'd love to be helpful to a family. And sometimes you can form permanent bonds with these volunteer grandparents. And those exist in a lot of communities.
Oh, yeah. So, Brittney, this intentional chosen family setting up relationships, you mentioned the prenatal classes is one of them, and also the library, the rhymery, singing. And what other suggestions would you give for the viewers so before having a baby, they can start to attend some of these things to form those prospective parents friendships?
Yeah. So a lot of them are available. I would actually start with your local library, because they often, even if it's programs not being run by them, they often know how to locate these other opportunities. And also through the prenatal groups, they can connect you with things that are going on in your community. Those are really good resources as starting points to figuring out what else is available in your area. There also are sort of where I live, there are midwives that sort of have a collective, and they have a lot of resources available to them. So in my area, that's Apple Tree is the name, and there's so many connections made through there, whether it's prenatal massage or infant massage. And these are classes where you can join and bring your baby, and you meet other moms in similar or parents. There's lots of other parents too. Just there's a lot of resources out there. And so taking the time to look is great. And also, if you don't find a good, people who fit with you right away, keep making the effort. I know it can be so overwhelming to get out of the house with a new baby. Words can't really describe how challenging it can be sometimes. But sometimes it's not even for your baby to go to these library groups or whatever it is. It's also for you to get out of the house and to see other people, even if you only make it for the last 10 minutes.
Wow. And Brittney, it looks like the chosen family is a huge part of this village for a lot of people without the natural families. And it looks like there's a service gap for the GP, the doctors, or even the hospital, because they actually know everybody who is doing the checkup when everybody is going to be delivered. If there's a share list, or optional to sign up for people to go to this prenatal friendship group, that can be a big service here.
Yeah, and in the area where I live, there's an organization called Kootenai Kids, and they even host lunches, and it's called Bellies to Babies. And so it's for pregnant women or pregnant folks, and then babies up to, I believe it's 6 months old, maybe older. So you get to start connecting with people while you're pregnant, and you get a meal out of it too. And it's a great way to connect.
Wow. So Brittney, today we have so many wonderful ideas and concepts here. What is the take-home message for the viewers?
Ooh, that's a hard one with such a big area of conversation. I think figuring out what your values are as a couple is really important for creating your village as well. So you can find people who mesh really well with you and your family. Setting healthy boundaries and communication with your existing village as well. Maybe conversation with friends of how we can continue our relationship, even when, I have a baby and you don't, or whatever it may be. And just keep trying and don't give up, because a village isn't created instantly. It happens over time, and you might not even notice that it's happening some of the time.
Yeah. And now that I think about it, Brit, one more idea before I end is
Yeah.
people often have their vision board for personal themselves.
Yeah.
I think it would be useful for them to actually draw out the village map for the couple. So they
Yeah.
can actually add people and delete people, whatever it is, but it's official.
Yeah. Yeah, like this is what we value. This is what we're looking for in our lives and our children's lives. And yeah, help it to come to fruition over time.
Yeah, wow. And thank you, Britt, today for another wonderful podcast. And we'll continue this series next time.
Yes. Thank you so much, Joseph.